So this next speaker has a 4-year degree in engineering and visual art from Dartmouth College and a master's degree in architecture from Harvard University. He has worked in the profession for 20 years in the United States and Europe. His resume includes employment with some of the world's most recognized architects. Since that time, he has designed homes, businesses, restaurants, churches, museums, and even bridges here in Pittsburgh. A renowned architect and owner of FishArch.com, please welcome Eric Fisher.
I've got the timer going here so I don't go too long. So, yes, I run Fisher Architecture, and we design thoughtful, experience-driven, contemporary, very modern buildings. And I started my business, it was about 8 years ago now. And I don't need the whole city in order, as my client, in order to keep going. I just need a little piece of it. And I'm fortunate that when you Google Pittsburgh architecture, I've come up #1 now for like 5 years. And the reason isn't because everybody's calling me and asking me to design buildings, because I'm hungry for clients and always eager to have people call me and ask me to design stuff for them. But it's rather because I'm popular in the coveted 16 to 28-year-old demographic, which you're a member of. And I'd like to believe it's because you guys are part of the future. And those are the sort of buildings that I try to design for this city. So I wonder if I have you fooled here. How many of you think this thing's actually built? Do you think that's a photograph? Hard to tell? Kind of goes back and forth. How many of you think it's a photograph? How many of you think it's a drawing? Yeah, well, you knew. But it is a drawing. And that's one of the great things that we get to do is think about the experience of what it's like to live in a place and then create drawings that represent that, and then to communicate those ideas to your client and to study them. Because when you can create drawings like this, you can learn from them and you can evaluate whether what you're doing is good or not. So what I'm going to do over the next couple minutes is talk about the reasons why I became an architect, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what architects do in the office. So it all started with Lego. Oh, how many of you guys have played with Lego when you were kids? Just about everybody, yeah. So I taught my Pitt intern, Jared Andruski, how to use the computer software that we use, which is Rhino, along with this plugin called V-Ray that gives you really cool materials and shadows. So he loves Lego, and his goal is to one day design architectural buildings for Legoland. So in one day, he learned how to design in our software, and he actually built this on the computer, and we printed it out. That's one of the things that we do in the office. We work a lot with interns, and we teach them skills, and then they end up creating models and doing projects with us. So I grew up working with Lego as a little kid, made all kinds of toys, and then I was compelled to draw cars and boats and houses, and I took art classes, and at the same time, I was really interested in math and science. I took a computer class, it was my junior year, when they were just starting to have computers in high schools, and did programming, and really loved that as well. So I was unclear at that time really what I wanted to do when I went to college. I was fortunate, though, to have developed a love of the natural landscape and of the city from growing up in Pittsburgh. And this, all three of these slides are within a couple blocks of where I grew up in Shadyside. And these are all photographs that I took. One is on some train tracks. Another is one of the wonderful walls that kind of encircle the city. And the last is looking at one of the gorgeous churches in Pittsburgh. We live in a beautiful city. I've been to a lot of places. I've lived in a lot of places. And I tell people I could live anywhere in the world, and I choose to live in Pittsburgh, the city where I grew up. So I got to college, and I did go to Dartmouth, and I studied both visual art and engineering. You would have thought I would have figured it out that I wanted to be an architect, but I wasn't that smart. And my junior year, I took a bicycle, and I'd never ridden a bicycle longer than 15 or 20 miles, and somehow I got it in my mind that I wanted to ride across the country. And I had a friend who was going to go with me, and then she couldn't go at the last moment, so I went anyway. So I took off from New Hampshire and bicycled 4,000 miles across the country. And there were no cell phones then, and I had my parents like wire me money ahead every 100 miles or so. And it was an incredible learning experience for me. And it really taught me to appreciate the natural landscape, and it gave me an appreciation for the land that I really hadn't had before. These are photographs that I took on that trip, and the trip culminated at the end of Vancouver Island in a little town called Port Hardy. I was writing newspaper articles along the way and making $50 here and there so I could pay myself to move ahead. So I caught a ferry at the end of Port Hardy, went up to Ketchikan in Alaska, sold my bike for like twice what I bought it for, and got a job in a cannery gutting fish. So then I ended up somehow getting a job with the Forest Service. And a month after I'd arrived in Alaska, I bought my rain gear and all this stuff. I didn't know what it was. And they fly me out to this boat. And, you know, it's all float planes and everything. And we land, and I ended up living on a boat for 6 months and flying into work every day by helicopter to work. And we got to hike out through the mountains, and we were laying out logging roads. So that bottom right is where we waited for the helicopters to come in Alaska. So the following year, I came back and worked in an office in Ketchikan, laying out the roads, you know, working as a civil engineer that I had actually gone out and done the work for before. So nobody told me to do this. My parents thought I was crazy. And in the end, it taught me that if you have a goal, you can accomplish it, and you can enjoy yourself along the way. So I developed an appreciation of the natural landscape. I also developed a love of the land and of water through doing sports. When I was at college and up to today, I'm training for the half marathon right now. I love running, and it's a great way to explore and learn about different places. And I go through Highland Park, which is where Jessica lives, and I'll go through Shenley Park a lot, which is near where I live. And I've also always loved the sport of rowing, which I came to when I was in graduate school. So it started out, we were just a bunch of kids on the dock trying to figure out you know, how to put an oar in the water. But gradually we became more and more serious, and I stayed with the sport for 25 years. So we'd get up at 4:30 in the morning, and we'd be on the water at 5:30, off at 7, then I'd get ready for work and go into work at about 8:30 or 9 and have way too much energy, you know, at about 9 o'clock in the morning. But it's a joyful way to spend the morning, and a wonderful way to learn about people and leadership and being part of a team and about appreciating nature in all its forms. Later, when I moved to LA, I was working on the Getty Museum as an architect for Richard Meyer and Partners, who's this famous architect. But I was getting up and I was the varsity rowing coach at Pepperdine University. So I had this sort of dual life. So I've also always had an appreciation for art. We were talking about Iris van Herpen backstage before I came out. And this is a show at the Carnegie Museum of Contemporary Fashion. A lot of the stuff, though, is designed using 3D printers. A lot of it was designed parametrically, using programs like Grasshopper and other interactive programs. These pieces of clothing that are being exhibited now have an incredible material quality to them. The detailing in them is amazing. They're profoundly architectural. And art in all its forms, I found this morning, but in all its forms has always inspired me. And travel's always been important to me. I think to you guys in the audience, I say, Pittsburgh is a wonderful place, but please leave Pittsburgh. You can acquire skills and then come back. Pittsburgh will be better if you have the bravery to leave your comfort zone, go to places where the best work in the world and whatever you're interested in is being done, then learn, then come back, and you'll be able to give back to your city. I'm including these photographs because just 3 weeks ago, I was in Milan and Barcelona, and oh my gosh, they're just such incredible cities. And I just felt humble by the beauty that's developed there over 800,000 years of development. And so we're better by going to other places. I lived in Berlin for a year. I lived in Alaska, as I said. I lived in Los Angeles, also in Hollywood, for a couple years. And I lived in Boston for 10 years before returning home to Pittsburgh and founding my own business. So I wanted to say this because I'm sure many of everybody up here has had grave doubts about what they were going to do, and they've wondered whether the choices they're making are correct, and they wonder if taking risks is going to pay off. And I would say, well, sometimes they do pay off, and sometimes they don't. But if you don't take the risks, you're not going to learn from your mistakes, and you're not going to reap the rewards of taking risks and having them become successes. And if you end up facing your fears and doing stuff anyway, you come to think of yourself as the kind of person who will do that. So as you're thinking about the things that are holding you back, you really have to evaluate why you're doing things or not doing things. And sometimes doing the more difficult thing is the way to go. Being an entrepreneur didn't come easily for me. I was also a shy kid as I was growing up. It's tough to put myself out there, and you have to if you're going to be an entrepreneur. But you acquire the skills that you need in order to succeed. And in the end, being an entrepreneur has really suited me, and I've grown a lot as a result, even though it may not have been the easiest thing for me to do. So now I'm fortunate enough to have my own office in architecture, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do and present a couple images of projects. So these were the folks who are in my office. This was 2 summers ago, and you can see a young Pitt student is building an architectural model, and that building, we called it Blue Steel after the Zoolander look, and the building was also made of blue steel. It's actually constructed now. I've had interns who have worked with me from Colombia, Pakistan, India, Iran, and various parts of the United States. It's really great to have a really eclectic, disparate group of people who come together to create buildings, and it creates a hugely energetic and fun, nurturing but challenging place. And I live and work out of my own home office, which I got to design myself. So what we do is simultaneously arty. Architecture is an art, and it's also very technical. So I'm showing you here the front of a building that we designed that cantilevered 70 feet over a glass factory over in the south side. And on top, you see what it looks like looming up over the factory. And then around, I just wanted to show you a couple of the technical drawings that allow that to take place. So along with this love of experience and this love of art, I also have a love of engineering and technique and materials. And it's really fun for me to do all of the drawings that puts stuff in place that allows buildings to be constructed in a precise manner. And here's the way the building looks in its completed form. Some of you may have seen it as you've been in the south side. The building certainly stands out. That's exactly what the clients wanted. They asked me if they could live above their glass factory, and they expected me to build them a house up through the factory, but it wasn't possible for a variety of reasons. So I said, well, I guess you could live above your glass factory. So the answer was to build the tower behind and then cantilever it out and over. And that's what the inside looks like. And you're looking at the kind of structure that allows something like that to happen. And this is my own home office. So you're looking at copper siding there. It's earth sheltered, so you can see the grass burned up on the side. The interns in the office are out at the end, and we're behind. I got to be the contractor of this building also, which means that I actually supervised and coordinated the construction of the project. And talk about facing your fears. That wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was the only way I could afford to build the thing. So in the end, I had to do it. In the end, I think of myself now as the kind of person who could do that. And it worked out well. I've been there now for, as I said, 8 years. On the top, we have something called a green roof, a planted roof. It's just greening up right now. I was out there weeding yesterday, and you're looking in at my bedroom on the second floor. There's a nice deck on the right side. And so what we're doing is we're taking the natural landscape and then bringing it up to the second floor. So along with the art and the engineering, having a knowledge of plants and the natural landscape is also very important to being an architect. And don't think we don't still sketch either. This was the sketch of a home that we have recently completed. And this was a drawing that I did in just the first couple weeks of the design. And that's what it ended up looking like when the design was complete. The idea was that you could actually enter the house through the green roof. And as you came in, you'd expect this dark, heavy, ominous experience. But when you open the door after going down the stair, you can look out and you can see through the glass, and the whole thing is open below. So this was a zero energy project that we did a couple years ago. And the idea was to balance energy to and from the grid. This was done with the cheapest possible materials. I had teams of people in the office doing energy calculations, as well as detailing all of the walls and floors and ceilings. We did tech calcs for the photovoltaic cells that you see there. And then there's solar hot water panels above that go to a heat pump for the engineering-minded among you. And that heat pump took water underneath the floors and then ended up heating the building. The glass as well was heated. So we're getting 20% of the actual heat in the building from the glass itself. And that's what it looks like in the evening. I skipped one, but what we're looking at here is the PNC living wall. That concept was mine, and I remember the folks at PNC saying, "You mean you can do that?" And the answer was, "Well, you can." And of course, it wasn't inexpensive for them to do that. But I was really proud that this got built, and I work often with partners. So I was working with an advertising company that had invited me in to make proposals to PNC. We're working on a law offices downtown right now. This is what the building looks like now, and this is what it'll look like at the end of the summer. So we're clothing the facade with perforated metal. That's metal with lots of holes in it, and draping this perforated metal like a cloth across the front of the building to create this new look for the building. It's been super fun to work on. We have models in the office now of it, both these computer models, but also physical models. And we've had teams of people over the summer create the technical drawings. So this was an existing house that Lauren may be familiar with, considering she's also working on it on the interiors. What we did was we took the sort of banal top part of that building off, preserved the block at the bottom, and did something really outgoing and extroverted on the top. The concept that we presented to the owners was to actually access the building via a bridge. So there's this glass garage door that you get to after you cross this graded metal bridge, and then there's another garage door in the back that opens up to the view. Again, more sketches. This is a house along a lake in Pittsburgh, and there's the final image that we came up with. This is a design for a playhouse that we did just 2 weeks ago, and we're laser cutting the letters, and we're optimistic we can do this really inexpensively too. So each side spells out one letter of the word play, and we're only going to get to create one of them, but you can see that the intent is to teach the children the letters of the alphabet. So when I talk about play, I have to say that we do run a business, but as Lauren said, it's not about the money. It's about being able to be creative and to play. We really like what we do. People at different levels who are interns, young architects, and more experienced folk like me all get to really enjoy the work we do. So if you're perhaps creative-minded and you like to draw, and if you are analytic, if you have engineering skills and are good at math and science, then perhaps architecture could be a career that you'd be interested in. The great thing about being an architect is that you get to have your feet on the ground doing these really technical drawings and talking with people, but you get to have your head in the clouds talking about theory and ideas and concepts. So you get to exercise both sides of your brain. And as other people have said, when you run your own business, that's a whole other side too, where you have to do business and accounting, and architects too are like psychologists, and we're like a lot of other things. So it's wonderful that I still feel like I'm learning every day, and still thinking very positively ahead about the projects I can create over the next 30 years or so. So that's what an architect does. Thanks a lot. And my business, again, Fisher Architecture, and look me up on the web. It's fisherarch.com. Thanks very much.
That was amazing. Let's give it up one more time for Mr. Fisher.